this is the 1% idea that I think is around mindset, all around mindset. And gratitude is going to be a tool for you that you can use to just have the mindset of success.
Welcome to the Sales Problem Podcast. Here is the problem we are trying to solve. Every year you hit the reset button and you have to beat your numbers and grow your business. You have to get quicker, faster, and better. We are two guys trying to solve that sales problem, trying to help you grow by enhancing what you know about the art and science of selling and personal development. Along the way, we're going to interview some interesting characters and debate some different angles about this common business problem. So thanks for joining us. Let's get growing. Welcome back, listeners, to the Sales Problem Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Burns. And joining me, as always, is my gracious and grateful co-host, Steve Comerford. Steve, how you doing?
Daniel, it's a beautiful day. It's always a beautiful day when we're together talking with some interesting people. So great to be here.
I'm feeling the love, Steve. I'm feeling the love. So today, once again, we are solving the sales problem. So let's start talking answers. We are the Great Canadian Growth Guys, and joining us today is the Gratitude Guy, Steve Foran. And it's going to be an exciting episode as we explore the link between gratitude and sales growth. Now, let's be honest, listeners. If you're thinking sales growth, the first thing you probably don't think of is gratitude. I think you're probably thinking about cold calls, about your sales funnel, about your CRM. But when you tune in here, that's what we give you, is the small incremental changes that are going to lead to big growth. It's those 1% extras. And we think that gratitude is an important one. So Steve Foran is an expert in gratitude. And while you may overlook gratitude, we hope by the end of the podcast today, you'll see how big of a part gratitude can play in your personal growth, your mental growth, and your career growth. And I am so excited today. I think that this is going to be one of our best guests ever, because I know this guy, and not only is he a great speaker, but he's just a great human in general. So I'm excited to have him on. Steve Foran's been teaching the habits of gratitude for 16 plus years. And I know he's a great human because listen to this goal. He's got a goal of 1 billion happier people. And what we hope is some of you listening will be part of that 1 billion. He wrote a book in 2019 called Surviving to Thriving, The 10 Laws of Grateful Leadership. Let's jump straight into the hot seat with Steve Foran. Steve, welcome to the show. How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling excited and anticipating this conversation that we're going to have. And also grateful. How can I not be grateful to be here with you, Daniel and Steve?
Well, we're grateful to have you too. So how about you give our listeners just a quick overview of your background and how you got to this point in your career, Steve?
Yeah, I kind of start by saying I'm an electrical engineer. Don't hold it against me. That's what I did my undergrad training in. I started working at Nova Scotia Power, electric utility, in 1987. And I knew for a fact I would retire there. I knew it. And then life happens, doesn't it? Probably some 15, 16 years later, I came to this gradual realization that my life was handed to me on a silver platter. And what I felt was my life was a gift, like everything and everything. And at the time I was in grad school, so in 2002, 2003, I said, I want to do some research on this. because I was in an MBA, taking a business degree. So I walked into the dean's office and I said, I want to do my research on the connection between gratitude and why people serve, charitable giving, why people help others. And he looked at me like I had three heads. Anyhow, I did my research. And when I finished that, I looked at my wife. I said, hon, I think this is what I got to start doing for work. And that was about 16 years ago, as you said in the introduction, Dan. And really have been, for the last 16, 17 years, have been teaching the benefits and how to build a grateful frame of mind. And it's just one last thing to say about, this for your podcast. This is the 1% idea that I think is around mindset, all around mindset. And gratitude is going to be a tool for you that you can use to just have the mindset of success.
Well, I've been following you too, Steve, and I've been seeing that you're living those benefits, and the content that you put out is great. So I've been a fan for a while.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Steve. Nice to have two Steves on this show, by the way. There need to be more Steves in the world. Anyway, my question is around, like, as a salesperson, it seems like a nice to have. It's not a skill that gets taught in sales training programs. It's how to open the call, how to present your pitch, and how to close, right? And same with running a business. It's always about, bottom line, running numbers, hitting the targets, all that fun stuff. So, like, what's the science behind gratitude? How does it give you an advantage then in those circumstances?
Yeah. Think of this idea of mindset. My book, it talks about surviving to thriving. If we just looked at the extremes of mindset, surviving, life is a battleground. Thriving, life is a playground. When you start your day, where do you want your mindset? Do you want to feel like life is a battleground, or do you want to feel like life is a playground? Because two things that are really important about this. When you're below that line and life feels like a playground, or feels like a battleground, number one, it doesn't feel very good. And number two is that when you're in a negative emotional state, you effectively turn the switch off to the executive function in your brain. This is what controls critical thinking, decision making. It's what enables you to moderate your behaviors or reactions. If someone does something that could emotionally trigger you, like when you're in that negative emotional state, that's when you're going to pick up your phone and send the text right away that after you send it, you wish you didn't. So, being in, we're feeling like life is a playground. To me, it's critical in a sales type role. And so the question is, how does gratitude relate to this? Martin Seligman has a model for human flourishing. Think of thriving. And in it are 24 positive character strengths. And I'm thinking, 24? I can't remember 3 things when I go to the grocery store. Like, give me one. Well, one of Seligman's colleagues does some research and ask the question, if you could only work on one of these 24, what is the best predictor of living a flourishing, thriving life? So that, my words, life can be a playground. And the answer is gratitude. So if you can only work on one, so gratitude is absolutely key to mindset. Number one, it makes you feel better. And number two, it puts your brain in a place where you can make decisions. You're going to be creative. When you get objections, you're not going to get defensive. You're less likely, let me say that, you're less likely to get defensive, and you're going to lean in to be curious, and you're going to find, well, tell me more about that. And if what I'm hearing is, or you got a customer who's just irate because of something, why am I going to give you business again? You just did that, 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 that. And to be able to not react, not get defensive, to be able to, how do you do that? Practice, mindset, those two key things.
Well, that's why I was going to go with that, because it seems in you describing this is that you're outwardly nice, and is there a distinction between not getting taken advantage of in those situations, right? You're showing that gratitude, but where does that, is there a fine line, or is there something that you share that helps people through that?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So I was doing a session to this group of, oh man, it was like my ideal clients, these business owners. I was coming in doing a showcase. There was probably 40 of them in the room. And one of the guys at the end, he says, I really enjoyed your presentation, but if my employees know that I'm grateful for them, I don't think they're not going to show up and give me their best. And that's basically what I did. I didn't know, and then, when you're driving home from a sales call and it comes to you what you should have said.
Yeah.
Well, it came to me. And because there's research out there that shows and that demonstrates that grateful people have that grateful mindset, they're more likely to achieve important life goals. So like in the broadest sense. So what that tells me is that they're not a lamb being led to slaughter, that they're not going to be taken advantage of. So there's these two things that we have to be aware of. And when we can step back, we can be other focused, but also be aware of, okay, is this a place where I'm being, overly grateful? Because anything taken to an extreme, gratitude included, when we can be overly grateful and I'm just subservient all the time, it's like, think of gratitude like a virtue, like the virtue of courage. You take it to either extreme, cowardice or foolhardy. Gratitude is just, we have to stay in that middle ground, because otherwise we will either get taken advantage of or we're going to take advantage of others.
There's so many things that you've said already, Steve. I love that you're digging into mindset, because in sales and in business growth, I think mindset really is a huge part of it. And that emotional control is especially important for any salesperson that's on the road, because one call can be great, and then you get back in the car and you're on a high, and you get a bad phone call and your mood shifts. And if you can't bring yourself back and have a little of that emotional control. What I heard about gratitude is that you can't be angry and grateful at the same time. So your brain can't hold that. So if you choose gratefulness, you're choosing the right emotional state to then carry on from, almost like the great reset button.
It really is. Yeah. Well said.
And so, Steve, I've personally experienced you speaking, because I hired you for my sales team quite some time ago, and you absolutely blew the doors off our conference room. It was extremely insightful. And Steve, we talk a lot about results. So what are the results that you think people can get when they make this shift towards gratitude?
That living life like a playground. That's the thing that I kind of throw out. If you're looking to be happier, and you kind of think, well, how does that connect to me and my work as a sales professional? Like, the happiness precedes the results that we get. And what we know when you develop a grateful frame of mind is that we're going to be more collaborative. We already said we got more likely that we're going to achieve important life goals. But what we're going to do is we're going to see our success and the connection of our success with others. And what it ends up doing, it's going to attract folks. It's going to attract folks to us as well, too, Daniel.
So you mentioned happier. And the thing that came up for me, Steve, is whenever I do goal setting with people, instead of being super specific, they end up at, I just want to be happy. That's all I want. A simple goal. I just want to be happy. But then they have no idea how to really get there. And I think that gratitude is one of those vehicles to help them get pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, it is. Let me tell you a story on this one as well, too, because I know at that session that we did, and so thank you very much for having me come into your team. I was at the gym. This is a few years ago, and this guy comes up to me, and he says, and he's pointing his finger at me, kind of wagging it, and he says, "You that gratitude thing, aren't you?" And I look at him, and I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm curious, right? So I'm trying to lean. Yeah, why? He told me where he worked and that I'd done this session, and that he said, I was really impressed with your energy, but you know what? I was kind of thinking, yeah, that ain't for me. And then about 6 months ago, so this would have been a couple of years ago that I had presented to his team. And he said, about 6 months ago, I just fell into some hard times. And do you remember you gave us the journal? Daniel, I would have given your team journals too, right?
Yeah.
And I said, oh yeah, everyone gets a journal. I said to myself, what do I got to lose? Where's that guy that gave me that journal? And I said, I found the journal and I started using it. And he said, Steve, it has been a game changer for me. It has totally changed. And this guy, when I positive, like, he had all these things, but life can get in the way and just happen. So it's like, I don't know. I think a story illustrates the impact that it can have in a lot of ways, and more, just in more sinew than just a few cold facts. So
that must have given you a couple extra skip in your step.
Well,
pretty exciting to hear that.
It does, and when I tell that story, it's very uplifting to know that when you're working with someone and you can help them. Like the same thing with you when you help one of your clients. When you see the work that you do in sales as providing a service and helping someone else with their quality of life, or the quality of life with their clients. It takes the focus off of me or you and puts it on others. And when we approach, I believe, when we approach our world with that perspective, it totally changes. And again, this is mindset, right? It totally changes how you and I show up in a sales conversation, in a service conversation, in a conversation we're having with a colleague about, hey, someone who might be helping you get ready and preparing for this sales conversation that you're going to have.
Well, I'm curious, Steve, on the state of, the workplace today, and you do a lot of work in the workplace, and culture, very important to you. And today, right, a lot of quiet quitting, there's a lot of turnover. Organizations are struggling with hanging on to their employees. How's that changed your speaking or your engagement with those organizations to bring gratitude and to help them kind of get through this, or to build a better culture?
Yeah, Steve, thanks. I think what we're seeing is more organizations are seeing the, how you say, connect the dots. For 16 years, I've been doing this. The early days, I was having a hard time connecting the dots. I mean, just probably because of me, but people were having a hard time seeing the connection. The last 3 years, business owners, employers, leaders in organizations I've been seeing more people come to me saying, and they've connected the dots between gratitude and I want to use it as a self-care practice to build internal resources around resilience, coping, mental toughness, these types of things. And so think of all these things. We hear about these through sales training as well too, right? But gratitude is a tool for self-care and to build resilience so that when you get rejection, that we're able to separate it from our person and what we do to be able to continue to move forward. Because it really is about every day of getting up and continuing to move forward and progress towards our dreams and our goals, whatever those might end up being. So I think, Steve, what I'm seeing is employers and business owners seeing a tighter connection between gratitude and an even more increased level of importance around it, because most of my clients are having a hard time finding and keeping people. And at the same time, I'm hearing a description of, we've seen the pendulum swing. Like we were so results focused, and now swing. Now it's all this people focused, and we have to be empathetic. And it's like, what we need to do is we need to be people focused and have a high performance culture. We need both of these things. It doesn't serve us well when we're at either end of the spectrum. So gratitude's a tool that can help do that.
Nice. I'm curious then on that part in terms, Dan and I are team builders. We manage people. We try to get, personal growth and success out of that group that we support. In that group, are there certain people that catch on to this quickly, and are there, and then what's your recommendation for the group that's really struggled? Is there a group that kind of stands out that you could tap into then to open them up to gratitude, struggling with it? What would you recommend there?
Yeah, gratitude is one of those things that I think each of us know. I can't tell anyone you should be grateful. We can't do that, because that's implying judgment and all these things, and so we know that's ineffective. So what I do, I simply tell my story, right? And just we share, you can share your experience. And we do this every day with our teams anyhow. And by sharing our experience and do it in a way that encourages gratitude and helps people find it themselves. Now, Steve, I'm here to tell you, if we got a group of 100 people, 10 people at the end are going to be like, I've been doing this for so long, or whatever the case is, I'm all in, I believe in it. Like, you're going to have 2 or 3 in that range that are going to walk out and say, that was a waste of time, right? That's just the way it is. And those people, maybe they'll change, maybe they won't, I don't know. And then, so it's this other group of other folks that are open to it. So we just need to be able to create a space for people to own it for themselves and to give people time, right? Because so, like, with everything going on in people's lives, what's happening in someone's life, and for you listening here, like, I don't know what's going on in your life. There could be something really big. And for me to say, like I said, I'm really excited and anticipating this conversation. And you could have something really big on your mind. You're thinking, why am I even listening to this podcast? Because I got to be doing something else. And I just think it's one of those things that we need to continually repeat and get in front of people and just invite people into it for themselves and create an atmosphere where it's safe to do that. And it's safe for someone to not participate, right? Where we're not going to ostracize them for not, because we care about them. Because everything is predicated on, we care about our people. Does that make sense?
No, I like that because, to your point, right? All 10 are very important. They're people that we care about. How they come along with that culture shift or that culture that you want to promote and keep going day to day. I think that's key. It's being comfortable letting that kind of progress at its own speed. I think as a young manager, I was always trying to push it and trying to force it. And I think just in the last maybe 10 years, I've been more comfortable with saying, okay, I'm gonna let that percolate over on the side, and that group of people will eventually come along and join in with the rest of the group. So I think I get your message.
Yeah, I mean, as a leader, right, sales leader, whoever is that person is, you do have an important role in modeling and in creating that culture to enable that. And I think it's good to encourage and challenge and support in a way that is in folks' interest, right? That's non-judgmental. With that's I believe if it comes from a place of care, I can say almost anything to someone if you know that I care about you. Like you're gonna like if you know I'm coming from that place, I can say almost anything, and even if you don't want to hear it, right? And you will still will still have relationship.
You're falling right into my lane here, Steve, with coaching and talking about caring for people. I love it because incredible things really do happen when you create space for people. And part of this podcast that we talk about is it's about salespeople, and we could just talk about sales growth, but a lot of podcasts do that. And there's personal growth. The people part of the equation is also just as important. And I think gratitude, what I've heard so far anyways, it reminds me that it's so easy for us to forget how many wonderful things are happening in our lives and focus on just that little thing that triggers us or, brings us into that state, and how long we can sit there and dwell on that when around us we have this abundance, we have this incredible life happening, and we just get so hung up on some of these tiny details. So it leads me into this question, Steve, because it's easy for people to sit and talk about the highlight reel, tell you everything when it's great and it's rosy, and here's all the awards and good things that are happening. But tell us about a time where things went wrong. We want a story where gratitude should have been the strategy, but it went a different way.
I want to take something out of my personal life. And I learned this from my wife, but I had to read it in a book to learn it. So we'd be invited out for dinner and to a friend's place, and we're on our way, and Lynn said, we'd stop in, we're going to pick up a bottle of wine. What do you mean? We don't need to get a bottle of wine. They're inviting us for dinner. And I'm saying this to her, and she would just, I don't know how she put up with me. And, or we'd go somewhere after, and she'd say, I'm just going to send a thank you card. What are you talking about? They invited you, did. But this wine for dinner thing, it seemed to be like, what are we bringing a bottle of wine for? And we were on vacation, and I was reading the book because my coach told me to read it, encouraged me to read it, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. And in it, he says, there's somewhere in it, my words, whenever I go to a house, I bring a gift. It could be a physical gift. It could be a prayer. But it's in gratitude and in honor for being welcomed into this house. And I read that, and I look at my wife who's sitting next to me, next to a pool, and I'm just like welling up, and I'm thinking, we're not taking a bottle of wine to Chris and Kelly Ann's because they need another bottle of wine, Steve. We're taking it because we're grateful for their gift of hospitality. And I just was like, how stupid could I be? Could you imagine, like, what my wife is putting up with me doing this? And it's just like, it totally changes. Like when we express gratitude, we're not doing it because someone else needs something. It's an expression of our need. Like when we see what we have as a gift, then there's this natural need to express it. And boys, and I learned that right about the start of when I started doing this work. So timing was well.
Oh, that's a great story. And it just triggered a thought for me about gift giving and how powerful that can be, especially when it's not at the times where people expect it necessarily. It's not Christmas. It's not the birthday. It's the gift for the sake of giving the gift because you're grateful, because you want to be there, you want to bring something to them. I think those are the times where it hits people too with the maximum impact.
It really does. And when I give a gift, I will know if I'm doing it out of gratitude or not if I get upset if someone doesn't say thank you. Because if someone doesn't say thank you and it bothers me, then I ask, well, who was I doing this for? Was I doing it for me? And there's nothing wrong. You don't have to give something. Like, it's okay to give something and expect something in return. But if you do that, it's not out of gratitude. It's from a place of, I'm looking for something reciprocal. And that came like to me. I was driving down the road and there's this long line of traffic that I'm in, and I've been waiting in this long line of traffic, and then cars are zooming up and cutting in. So there's one guy, he zooms up. I've been waiting for 20 minutes. I said, okay, I let him in. Guess what? Not a wave, nothing. And I'm just like, you would. And I caught myself. Because I'm thinking I'm doing this out of gratitude. I'm not doing it out of gratitude if I want to thank you back from him. Does that make sense, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a gift when okay, Steve, you want to help someone out of gratitude? Well, don't look for anything in return. It's nice when you get a thank you, but it doesn't always happen.
We hit a pause there, Dan. I think there was something else. But I like Steve. That. I like that wave, Steve. My youngest son, he's a habitual waver when he goes in and out of traffic. He's always waving at the car behind him. So I learned that from him. I'm much better at it.
Yeah.
Steve, I'll dive into the power question then. And ask Steve for two powerful questions. Steve, we always get into this, so our listeners, if they're driving, if they're on their way to a call, and they've got something that they can, try out for a question, something that's powerful, something for them to think about themselves, or something to ask their clients around the scope of gratitude, what would you suggest?
I'm gonna use one question. And we'll use it in two different circumstances. So if you're on the way to a call with a potential client, want to ask yourself the question, what am I grateful for about this upcoming meeting? And here's the caveat. None of your answers can be benefits to you. So it can't be, I'm grateful for the business I'm going to get. I'm grateful for the potential referral. Those can't be answers. What are you grateful for about this upcoming call? And they can't be benefits to you. And if you want to dig, I can give you some hints, but you come up with the answers. They can't be benefits to you. And the second question is the same question, but a different circumstance. When you find yourself in the midst of a challenge, I want to invite you to ask yourself, what might I be grateful for in all this crap that I'm dealing with right now? And if you can't come, and I want you to write the answer down too. Is like, you can think about it as you're driving, but go somewhere and write the answer down. And if you can't come up with anything, that's okay. Just keep track of it over the next couple of days and see what you come up with. So Dan, one question with a couple different caveats in different situations. So I'm happy to give some tips towards the first question, but
well, why don't I jump in? And what
to.
came to me, if I'm seeing a client and it can't be about me, I would think about how grateful I am to serve, the opportunity to serve somebody. And the second thing that popped up is the opportunity to solve a problem, something that is a concern to them. You know, we ask that question, what's keeping you up at night? And if you can go to that call and then answer that question and serve in that way, I think that is something to be grateful for. The impact that would have then on somebody's life, that's the ultimate payoff in sales.
Yeah, it is. And here's in this instance here, someone could say, Steve, what are you grateful for about being on this podcast? A benefit to me could be, what if I said, oh, I'm grateful that I have this exposure and could potentially get hired by people, right? Benefit to me. Doesn't sound very like, do you feel like you're getting attracted to me when I say that, right? Or I could say, I'm grateful that Daniel and Stephen put their social capital on the line because this is their podcast and they invited me into their space, and they're putting their reputation on the line with their listeners for me. That's what I thought before I got on this podcast. And I realized, how do you think that helps me show up for this podcast when I think that way? I'm thinking I'm in a very privileged position here that someone has allowed me to do that. And I think the exact same thing when I work with sales teams. I want you thinking about, what are the sacrifices that others are making and the services that, as you said, Daniel, the problems that you can solve for others. We get our eyes off self and get our eyes on others.
I think that's great. When you talked about personal and the focus on gratitude, it made me think of sometimes you can find a message inside the mess. And sometimes things are happening to us, but also for us. And that gratitude, I think, sometimes gives you hope that it's not all just a mess. There is some reason, there is a message. This is going to serve me at some point. I have to get through the other side, and it's not fun, but it's not completely bad.
You are 100% bang on there, Daniel. And gratitude is about, it doesn't pretend that crap, we're not ignoring it. But when we take a deliberate eye to be able to focus on and ask ourselves, what are we grateful for? We're looking for the good in a situation. And that can be learning. It could be the person you're becoming. It could be relationships that are around you that it's just like, wow, I have this strength, these resources I can tap into. I'm not alone. Yeah, very powerful. Thanks.
Well, I love your point, Steve, because you tie it back to the story you told about the gentleman who then found his journal and got back on track. Right, in an annual sales plan, there's a lot of tough times in between, month 1 and month 12 or whatever the journey is that you're on your success or your within your business. So it's having that chance to stop and look at where you're grateful and then move from that point. That's the takeaway for me is to have that mindset and to push through. Fantastic. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Steve, tell all of our listeners what's next for you and where can people connect to you?
I am, my dream is 1 billion happier people. We haven't got that figured out yet, so continuing to figure that out. I'm happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. You find me on LinkedIn, so please connect. And when you do, just in the invite or connection, just mention Daniel and Stephen and the podcast. So just so I know how we connected. And if you're interested in resources for yourself or your team, there's lots of stuff on my website, gratitudeatwork.ca.
Well, I hope that you can add Steve and I in the 1 billion happier people, because I think that we would like to be on that list contributing. Yeah. And I hope all of our listeners have grabbed their journals, because there's been some powerful insights to write down here from the gratitude guy, who's really brought us the goods that can get you the growth. And we've learned so much from you today, Steve, and we are so thankful and also grateful to you for today.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed being here. Thanks, Stephen, and thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Steve. I think, Dan, we need to add happy to the 2 happy growth guys. Should we do that?
I will make the edit when we announce the podcast here, Steve. So this has been the Sales Problem Podcast. So please remember to follow us, subscribe, and share with your friends. If you have any feedback, please email us at thesalesproblempodcast@gmail.com. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. And we are here to help you get the growth you need to thrive and succeed. We are the Great Canadian Growth Guys, and we are getting you the answers to solve the sales problem. So keep growing your business, growing yourself, and growing your sales.